10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Drag Racing fans, what's going on? It is the Competition Plus Power Hour brought to you by Competition Plus. I am one of your co-hosts, Sam Smith from Outlaw Performance ENT, and my buddy to the left and to the right all the time is this guy, the Monday Morning Racer.
Monday Morning Racer. And look, no, folks, that doesn't mean I just race on Monday or can talk on Monday. No, it's just like Monday Morning Quarterback. I'm that guy right now live on the Power Hour. We're going to talk some drag racing. Hey, put in the comments. Maybe there's something out there you want to talk about. We would love to talk about it along with you. Please, as someone just did, hit that like button on whatever channel you're watching this, whether it's YouTube, Periscope, or Facebook. Hit the share button as well. Join in the conversation on drag racing. Sam, we were talking before the show about some pro stock news. What's going on in the world, man?
Man, pro stock news, man. First of all, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Lee, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. But, you know, J.R. Todd is looking to come at a full season for 2021. So I think that is really, really good news. You know, he didn't really have a bad year in 2020, but I think like everybody wants to do, everyone, if you're not number one, you're shooting for number one in the 2021 race season. So I think that's a great thing to talk about. Also, Troy Coughlin Jr., you know, hanging over the realms of that with his dad leaving and stepping away. So now he's going to be the man of the Jigs team. Hopefully I did a good job doing that. And then there's some other drivers that I think we could really touch on and talk about with the pro stock. But what do you got for us here this week?
Look, man, I agree. J.R. Todd, they did not have as great of a year they were hoping to have, especially with the announcement of John Force Racing not being there. You definitely think that Coletta team would have moved to the front and made waves. I will say this, though. If you happen to check out my Arizona Nationals in review on my YouTube channel, Monday Morning Racer, you'll notice I mentioned that it did not look good for J.R. Todd. I am surprised they even did get where they got when you look at where they were at the Arizona Nationals to accomplish what they did in 11 races. They did have a slight turnaround. Now, pro stock, look, yes, you had the announcement today, Troy Coughlin going to be back in a pro stock car next year, 2021. Yeah, meh, okay. I mean, I kind of expected that.
But he brings Ricky Jones with him. Someone said that in the comments too. I mean, you got to love that just a little bit. But I mean, hey, we don't always have to disagree. I mean, we don't always have to agree, right?
Right. Look, man, look, nothing against Troy. Accomplished drag racer with and without doors in the world of drag racing. But I really am not that excited about him coming back. I kind of expected it. That's why I'm not excited about it. I'm excited to watch guys like Mason McGahey, watch guys like Special Kyle Koretsky. Look, Kyle showed some performance in a part-time ride with KB Racing. Really, you think about it, it was one of the more standout KB cars behind Jason Line. Hey, he beats the natural 2 first rounds, and he also makes a final round appearance there at the final. So my eye is on Kyle Kid Chaos Koretsky.
Yeah, and like I said, I think I like that too. But it is kind of good to see the Coughlin family keep that tradition going, right? We've had this tradition for such a long time. Even the Line family, you know, seeing Jason step back, it changes the dynamic. But like you said, and like we've continued to say between you and I, we like to see these younger drivers, you know, keep that tradition of racing alive. And I think if we do not continue to see the younger development and the growth of it, I think we may lack in points. And like I will continue to say, continue to preach to the choir, but we cannot afford the lack in the classes. We cannot afford to not have the class full.
Right, man. Hey, speaking of pro stock, aren't you excited that later on we've got a pro stock legend? Larry Morgan will be on the show.
Man, so much to think about, so much to talk about there. I mean, I don't even know where to start, right? But to all of our fans, we do need to tell you this. If you guys ever have any questions for us or any questions for Jeff, our insider, please email us at powerhourcp@gmail.com. powerhourcp@gmail.com. We do actually check those emails. You won't get a notification that says, hey, somebody will get back to you in a couple of days. We actually check those. And if you miss any of this or you want to listen to it back, go over to all your platforms that you can listen to a podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, like I said, Google, Anchor, any of those podcast platforms, and you can listen back to the Power Hour when you're on those long drives in the shop or doing whatever you love to do during the week.
Sam, look, Mark put a comment from Facebook, and folks, we want to interact with you, put those comments out there, try to get to each and every one of them, definitely for our guests later on. But Mark says this: let's hope we see some different winners in Funny Car in 2021 besides all the DSR finals. Man, yes, DSR finals, they sweep the season, 11 wins for the DSR camp in Funny Car. And, look, it was a good points battle between the DSR cars, but I agree with you, Mark. I do want to see other people win. I'm surprised with John Force Racing not being in this year that Tim Wilkerson, that Bob Tasca, that some of the other teams out there didn't make enough strides and get to those final rounds for even the opportunity to win a race. Who shocks you the most, Sam, that, well, they didn't even show up and show out in the Funny Car ranks?
Well, when it comes to that, I guess I'm a little biased. Our champion this year definitely was my favorite coming in. Without having, the JFR cars there, it kind of takes my dynamic away. I'm going to say it hand in hand again. I am a John Force believer. Like, I believe in it. I think if he gets out of this ring, I think the next person that we had on last week has to step up. I think Stevie Fast Jackson, if John Force says, hey, I'm done, then I think Stevie needs to get in the car because he's the next, best. But I wasn't really shocked to see a lot of DSR cars win because, they're consistent. They're always there. They're always in the mix. So to me, it wasn't really a surprise, to be honest with you.
Definitely not a surprise to see them do so well. They know what they're doing over there in the Nitro ranks, especially in Funny Car. Again, though, just shocked that Tim Wilkerson couldn't nab one this year, or especially Bob Tasca after 2019 and the performance he's shown. You have to wonder how much that little hiccup with COVID and going back to Indy, how much it might have actually affected the team. Speaking of teams, Sam, let me bring this comment from John up. John makes this comment: I love drag racing, but can't get that excited for the NHRA Country Club crowd. Now, John, I would say, yes, there may be some of those out there that are chomping down on the caviar along with sucking in the nitro fumes. But, man, it is not all a country club crowd. Sam, what about some of those teams that are independent, trudging, putting in the hard work and showing up and barely making the show and yet still loving it?
That just shows the hard work and the dedication of these teams that are doing this constantly, that are staying in this battle and not giving up. I think we're going to see a lot more smaller teams this year that got to do a little bit more testing. And back to your other comment too, before I finish, is you were surprised by this, but I think a lot of teams couldn't throw the kitchen sink at everything. They didn't get all the test passes that they wanted or all the time trials. So you had to make your adjustments count. So when you look at it, if you have 3 or 4 cars in the field and they're making test passes, you have a lot more data across the board. So that's where I think that one stands. The country club comment, as a true fan of drag racing, I can see where someone can say that. But I love all sorts of drag racing. Yes, the grudge racing, a lot more guys are into that. It's bringing a lot more people into the sport. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it all, and you have these smaller teams coming in, battling, doing good, it's only going to prevail them for the years to come. They're going to gain the data, they're going to gain the knowledge and the equipment and maybe some more sponsors. And then those are going to be your forefront heavy runners later down the road.
Definitely so. Well, John, look, when I think of country club crowd, again, you can make the argument that there are some of those individuals out in NHRA drag racing, but man, there are others that you can definitely pull for. And I would implore, find those others and pull for them amongst the crowd. For example, Terry Haddock. He's no country club guy for sure. He is not a country club guy out there getting it done with a top fueler and funny car, making the show and being, well, I mean, maybe not winning races, but he is living the nitro dream out there race to race, getting a car in. I think of who Jeff Arend drives for, the Russos. Man, they come over from Australia just to do a few races a year, and they didn't even get to do that this year, to run nitro funny car drag racing. I think of like the Richards. I think of the Smiths. I mean, definitely. There are plenty out there still. They don't have huge budgets, and they're going out there and they're putting nitro in their cars, and they're risking it because of the love of drag racing. So, look, I implore you, find those that are not at the country club, support them, buy a T-shirt, get along on their programs, know what's happening, like the Leverage Racing Group. Those guys, Lex June, there are still great stories out there in drag racing with the small guy, for sure. Well, look, folks, at this time, we're going to bring on my co-host, Sam Smith, but not only the co-host, Sam Smith, we're also going to bring on our pit insider, who I want you to know is taking a break from his beer and cigar to come talk to you all. That is how highly he thinks of you. And at this moment, our pit insider, Jeff Arend. Jeff, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Doing great.
On,
man,
Jeff.
What do you want to talk about tonight?
Whatever you guys want to talk about. I'm pretty easy.
Well, man, look, there was a interesting motorsports moment this past weekend in F1. Mr. Grosjean had a fiery crash, and I couldn't help but think to myself, everybody was up in arms. It was fiery. It was terrible. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what does a funny car driver go through? This happens all the time. So can you break down for us what you as a driver in a nitro methane burning funny car, you're wearing to protect yourself in such a situation?
All right. That's a pretty easy one since I've done it a few times. So you're mandated to wear underwear underneath, like fireproof underwear. And then the actual driving suit you wear has to be a spec -20 suit. And I've had some pretty good fires and never really got burned. I've discolored the fire suit a couple times, but never really felt anything. You've got to wear inner and outer gloves. And then probably the biggest thing, Formula One, obviously, they're wearing a little bit less layer protection because they don't have fires like we do. But the helmet is a big deal. And I was lucky enough when I drove Alexis's car back in 2016 that the Colettas bought me all Stand 21 stuff. It's not to say that one brand's better than another, but the Stand 21's a pretty high brand and very good quality. And the best thing about it for me was the actual visor and the helmet is about twice as thick as any other visor and any other helmet I've ever seen before. And Chad Head did a little test with like a torch behind the visor before. And I think it was in about 28 or 30 seconds, you could burn a hole through that visor, feel heat on the other side. And the Stand 21 visor was more like, a minute and a half or 2 minutes. So that's a pretty big deal. But going back to that crash from Formula One, I mean, that's some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I don't know how you go from 140 miles an hour to zero, hitting the K-rail, going underneath it. The halo basically saved his life, obviously, because his head would have hit the K-rail if not for the halo. But that was a big fire, and he got out of there. I mean, if he had got knocked unconscious, I don't think those guys were getting to him fast enough.
Definitely, Jeff, definitely. I think even though the response of the F1 safety team was adequate, I do think they need to look at it and be like, how can we improve? Because I can't help but think of the NHRA safety safari and like, wow, man, they're on the spot. Like the car is still rolling and they're out there. Like with Alexis, she jumps off into the arms of a big burly man in a safety safari suit. I mean, he was there as that car was still rolling. I mean, the NHRA safety safari, it just doesn't get enough love.
No, they don't. one thing to race in that series. You know, you as a driver, you feel very, very safe because they have the best guys there, that they've gone through these fires. They know what to do. But going back to that Formula One deal, I mean, that track's not just a quarter mile long or whatever. In my opinion, they were there pretty fast. And you go back, I've watched some old Formula One movies, and they had that Professor Sid Watkins who got hired as the safety guy, you know, that really brought a lot of changes to F1 to make it safer. And he was the one who had the idea to actually ride in the safety car behind the cars on the first lap, because that's usually where you see some pretty big accidents. So I think they did a pretty good job considering what they have to go through to get there. Probably not as professional as the NHRA guys, but they did what they had to do. And, you know, thank God that he was safe getting out of the car.
I mean, with all these fires, though, and everything that's going on, I do believe we are in NHRA and in other sports, too. I think we are in the right direction of what we're doing with all the safety stuff. I don't think we're reactive. I think we're more on the proactive side. Now, if we could get some of these other racers, my generation, you know, Lee, our generation racers, to understand the importance of safety. I mean, even at our local drag strip when I'm here, and, you know, with my other business, I sell race car parts, but a lot of people want to go fast and don't understand what can happen if you don't have the proper stuff. You know, I did the research on some of that, like you were talking about, Jeff, and just the amount of time you have from a Dash 20 to a multi-layer 3A.5, I mean, is ridiculous. You can't even get your seatbelts off in enough time that these drivers in the NHRA may have another 10 seconds to be able to get out of the car. So I think if we can preach safety across the board, I think we'll grow. And I think it's also funny that we're talking safety and we're talking fire, especially with one of our guests that is coming on tonight.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny, I worked for Frank Hawley's for a long time, and we talked about safety equipment. And, you know, at the time, I think when I worked there before, you know, the hand shields were just coming out and a few other things for the funny cars. And as a driver, you're like, take that thing off. I don't need it. But in the end, you know, Frank said, hey, let's say you're going to be on a run, and you know ahead of time that when you get to half track, the car's going to flip over, hit the guardrail, be on fire, fuel's going to go everywhere. Would you like wear everything you could? And you go, for sure you would. I mean, you'd be an idiot not to wear it all. He goes, how do you know that stuff's not going to happen to you? And I was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. You know, and the racers that are out there, they're buying like the best turbos or superchargers or whatever. But when it comes to safety equipment, sometimes I see them scrimping on that a little bit. And I don't think you can wear too much of that stuff. I mean, if you get another 30 seconds in there, just buy the best stuff you can, or overbuy for the class that you need or the rules that you need, and it's going to help you one day. Hopefully you don't need it, but if you ever do need it, it's definitely worth having.
Definitely, man. As I like to say, racing proves that will never happen does actually happen.
For sure.
Well, Jeff, look, thank you for your time on the Power Hour. We look forward to having you next week, man.
All right, sounds good. I'll try and get some more dirt scraped up for next week, and we'll have a little more fun. But keep it going, guys. Thanks.
All right, we want dirt. We want dirt.
Yeah, I know you do.
We want the dirt, but we'll get some emails in, even if I have to write them myself.
All right, keep plugging that for me. Thanks.
On the street, in the water, or at the track. If you drive it, we can fuel it.
All right. So, Sam, look, you mentioned it yourself. You have a company that does sell racing products, and it amazes me. I'll go to a local track, and you'll see someone in blue jeans and no gloves and tennis shoes, and I get it. More than likely, nothing's ever going to happen. But yet I have seen plenty of videos. One stands out in my mind of Pro Tree racing videos up in Canada. Guy smacks the wall and must have hit the side with the fuel pump or something, and car just bursts into flames. It's like a 10.5 car. It's not super fast, running only 8th mile. There he goes, hits the wall, bursts into flames. And the way he spun, the passenger side, he couldn't get out. So he had to go out through the flames. And yeah, he got a few burns out of it on his hands and around his neck because he wasn't wearing any gloves. It's amazing to me. Folks out there, do not skimp on safety. No,
I mean, no matter how fast you want to go, no matter what your goal is, I've been lucky and blessed to never crash, never to blow anything up or anything like that. But I saw one crash that really changed my whole outlook on everything at our local drag strip. And I just believe you build your car to how fast you want to go. But you need to build that just a little bit safer than what you're expecting, because there is that moment where things could go perfectly right and the car can hook and everything can happen. And when that happens, you really do want to make sure you have the best stuff to keep you safe and to keep you going, to keep being able to do what you love to do. But I mean, there's people out there, there was, we talked about fires. There was an unfortunate event with one of the outlaw guys here this weekend. Reaper, he lost 2 cars due to a fire. Nothing that had to do with him going down the track, just an electrical fire, I'm guessing, is what happened in this trailer. Loses 2 cars. So that sense of something can happen whenever. You'll never expect it. And the only way to be ahead of it is to have the 7 P's. Like Stevie Fast Jackson said, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. So, I mean, that's my safety spill for this week.
And look, Sam, mentioning that fire, a lot of drag racers out there, they don't realize that, well, no, your car is not covered under your insurance. That's extra insurance that you actually need to get when you have it in transportation, in a trailer, or even at the track. And there are insurances out there. I'm not going to name drop any of the particular ones, but go search. And if you haven't insured your race car, you need to check into that. You never know when a trailer fire might happen. How many has there been this year, from pro down to the local level? It's been
ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, not just with that, but then, when you look in some of these comments right here, Destroyer 12 that's a great comment right there. Safety, then power. I agree wholeheartedly. And then Mark, to answer your question, you had a question up here. It was about the lowering numbers of in the pro stock classes, or was it? No, it was in the pro mod classes. Sorry, looking for that here. I think with where is it? So I can answer this correctly. Uh-oh. Can't find it, but if we find that question, we'll bring it back up. But I mean, safety is always key in my books. Keeping these drivers safe so they can go back down, like we've seen. Like you said, having these random fires is not good for any one of us. So keep that going, everybody. Keep safe. Again, also, and we'll mention this later too, is competitionplus.com. Go over there, subscribe to all of their stuff. Also, the Competition Plus apparel. Go over and get your apparel today to support Competition Plus. Any comments that stand out to you, Lee?
Yeah, man. Look, let me bring out the one of the gorillas or elephants in the room regularly in NHRA chats is NHRA quarter mile drag racing with the nitro cars. So Victor asked, when will NHRA bring quarter mile racing back for the nitro cars? I keep hearing that's why so many 80s and 90s fans have stopped coming to events. Well, first of all, I think with the quarter mile, yes, there is that mystique in drag racing of racing to the quarter mile, but you've got to remember, depending on facility, depending on location, depending on what type of cars that are running, it can be advantageous to run to other mile markers. For example, in the Southeast, there used to be many, there's few now, but there are actually 10th mile drag strips. It's just what they had to run in the situation that they're in, so they had to run 10th mile. When you look at the situation right now in NHRA nitromethane drag racing, you have a serious combination of, one, the tire technology. Goodyear is like, we can't do the tire over what they can get to, so we need to shorten the distance. We need to slow the cars down. If you look at one of my shows, Between the Slicks, on Monday Morning Racer, I had Fast Jack Beckman on. We talked about this very issue. One of the things he brought up is a tuning, from tuning to 1,000 foot and tuning to a quarter mile, because you got to make the car last. Folks, if they go to quarter mile, theoretically they become faster, but for the cars to last and to survive, they're actually going to slow down. Yeah, we'll see them faster than they were many years ago. I have to say this, though. At the facilities that they could run quarter mile, I would love to see it, okay? But I realize this. I want, ultimately, the sport to be safe, and I want the humans in these cars, not at my expense, lose their lives. I want them to get out of the car. I want to have a good show. I want to have an entertaining show, but at the end of the day, I want them to be able to go to the home of their families. And if limiting the speeds to 1,000 foot, limiting the race to 1,000 foot helps that, so be it. Also, it's 320 feet, folks. Honestly, you can't really tell the difference.
Everything.
You can't really tell the difference.
To some, that's everything, though.
No, it's not everything.
This is okay, Lee, and you've probably heard it. So here it goes. Here's going to be our debate. Then we're going to move on. I've heard it many a times that 8th mile is going to be the death of quarter mile racing. 8th mile racing is going to be the death of quarter mile racing. And like you said, the quarter mile racing, 1,000 foot racing to the quarter mile, it's only 320 feet. Yes, we go faster, but why are we so focused on the number? We're so focused on the simple number of how fast did we go, the mile per hour. Why is that the focal point of drag racing? Why are we not talking about anything else? We're not talking about, the G's that they're getting. We're not talking about how many motors we're going through, how many people were in the stands. All we are doing is focusing on mile per hour. Why is that?
Honestly, when someone asks me that question, I answer it this way. One, all motorsports comes out of land speed record. Everything. It comes from like the beaches of Daytona and the Bonneville Salt Flats. And yes, it's morphed into other things, but nonetheless, there's always that impact from land speed record. And I think you have that influence still on drag racing at the professional ranks of how fast did I go in a measured distance. When you look over the history of drag racing, it's fascinating to me. I wonder if anyone back, 50 years ago was saying things like, well, it's not half mile. They're going to the quarter. That's not real drag racing.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if there was that case.
I mean, we get it up here, the import guys. Oh, we have to do this. I think the shorter track, it makes a driver a driver. Again, I'm going to allude to last weekend. If you didn't listen to it, you can go over to Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and listen to it with Steve Best. You take all the electronics out of the car, you leave the track where it's at, and you race. It's going to make people understand that, hey, I'm not just pressing a button and holding on. If you make a driver, who cares? I personally don't care. Yes, the records are cool. Yes, the land speed is cool. But I'm gonna give you this moment here. How many times do we watch football and do they say, well, this is how fast the person was running? I ask you that question, Lee. How many times do they actually say, well, this is how fast they were running? Never. They tell you how many sacks they've had, how many interceptions, how many yards they threw for, everything else. Why are we so focused? And I think we should put our attention on something else other than the mile per hour.
Look, for the most part, I agree with you there. I think we need a record of what is going on nonetheless. But look, I would love to see a NHRA quarter mile exhibition event and turn the lights off. Just win light. That's all it is. That's all it is. Because look, one of the guests we're about to have on, Quain Stott, he'll tell you that all you need is a win light. That's all you need. You don't need that ET.
How cool. I don't know if you've ever been to one of Wes Buck's events down in Colorado. The first couple of test time trials and all through testing, there is no scoreboard. So unless you have a pencil sharp eye where you can say that car just went 295, that car just went 185 mile an hour, you don't know. And that's the excitement of it. You don't know until that scoreboard's on, and then it changes everything. I don't care. Put how fast they went, take off the mile an hour. it changes everything.
I'm fine with it, man. It's disappointing that we've got to a day in time where, some of the outlaw events, they're like, oh, if you didn't set a record, you didn't have an event. Like, no, these guys still went down and drag race, eighth of a mile, quarter mile, and they still were in competition. They raced. They didn't have to set a record to actually have an event. So, man.
But that's the world we live in. That's the world we live in. You got to set a record or you didn't have an event.
Right. Well, look, let's talk to a couple of folks that knows definitely a lot more about drag racing than we do and setting records and all this stuff about distance and wind lights. Look, when you think of Larry Morgan, Sam, what do you think about? What comes to your mind first?
Fire aid.
Yeah, I think of that. I think of Castro GTX. I think of that. That's the one that comes to my mind. That was the one that comes to my mind. And folks, also after the break, we're going to bring on Larry Morgan. We're going to bring on Quain Stott. Quain Stott, owner promoter of the Southeast Gassers Association, for a chat with them. Be ready right after this break for Competition Plus apparel.
Get your CompetitionPlus.com apparel today. Whether it's our nitro-burning funny car design or the vibrant door slammer design, we have the swag to show you are always in the know. Get yourself a hat too. And we know not everyone enjoys wearing a mask, but if you must wear one, at least wear a good-looking one. Check out the new CompetitionPlusApparel.com for the latest from the place where you have trusted for your news on the internet for over 2 decades.
Surrounded by greatness.
Yes, surrounded by greatness. Quain Stott, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Doing good.
You?
Yes, sir. Can't complain. I'm working tonight. I took off to talk to you guys, so y'all special.
Awesome. We appreciate it, man. We appreciate it. Larry, how you doing?
Good to see you too.
Uh-oh, can Larry hear us?
You there,
I can
Larry?
hear you now.
Okay, cool. Larry can hear us now. Well, we're just as good as Verizon then.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate it. We've
got a couple of comments there, Lee. People are saying that the NFL does show how fast they're going. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe speed does matter.
Hey,
what do you guys think? We have to ask these guys. What do you guys think? Are we focused on the wrong thing when everyone focuses on mile per hour, or should we just turn the mile per hour off?
Turn them all off. It's a show.
See?
Y'all already know.
The guy sitting next to me puts the best show on that there is.
Well, that's our show tonight, folks. Y'all take care. We're done. We've solved all of drag racing's problems right there.
Lee, the Slammy Award 2 weeks in a row goes to me. 2 weeks in a row. No Wallies here. Slammies. I win.
Slammies.
I got it.
Slammies. Okay, we'll let you have it.
Y'all already know how I feel. Because my show, we do not turn on the scoreboards. The spectators have no clue how fast the cars are going.
And why? Can you speak to that and kind of just tell us why you feel that way?
Well, it started off by accident because in the 1960s they didn't have scoreboards, and we're trying to take the fans into a time tunnel to 1967. A lot of tracks still didn't have clocks, and when they did, it didn't work right. But as time went on, we found out that it made the racing better. And I'm big on fan surveys, so I go up and I ask the fans. I did get some complaints that why don't you show the times in ET? And I said, because we're not bracket racing. I said, we're racing first finish line win, so that shouldn't matter. And then those same fans are still sitting in the bleachers when the final round comes, where before they would probably leave in the semifinals because they had a pretty good idea who was going to win. And but I look back to our street racing days. That you'd go somewhere and everybody went out to watch the street race because nobody had a clue what kind of ET or times either car ran. So and we will never go to scoreboards, never. And I do get some complaints from some of the haters, but for the most part, and I think our racers like it better too. And like y'all pointed out a while ago, nobody has a clue who's going to win. But if you show the scoreboards, they've got a pretty good idea if they pay attention.
Definitely.
I agree 100%.
speaking of, street racing back in the days, origins, Larry, I've got to ask you, where does it all begin with you to become the Larry Morgan that we know today? Where did the drag racing bug bite you? How'd you get into it?
Well, there was a service station in the town I was from, and the guys that worked there raced, and I started cleaning their cars so I could go to the racetrack. And that's how it all began for me. And then I built a car, and the rest is history. I was lucky enough to be hooked up with a lot of good people in my time, and I was a driven person that wanted to do this. And when I graduated from high school, my high school spotlight, I told them I wanted to become a professional drag racer, and that was in 1974. And I was lucky enough to do that. I'm not sure you can do that anymore, but I was lucky. That's how it all started.
Stellar, man. Thank you for sharing that.
There's a question there by Rocky that I want you to bring up there, Lee.
Sure, we'll bring it up.
Hours in association.
So what Rocky's saying is that there is nobody in racing, he's talking about Quain here, that puts in more hours to keep a racing association going, that makes you forget everything else, but first to the finish line wins, and that is why fans love the show he puts on. And Quain, look, talking about the show that you put on, I was there at Shadyside. There was nowhere else to park. I got there before racing started, and everybody, the Shadyside officials were like, well, where are we going to put everybody?
We ran completely out of parking. Luckily, we was able to go to the yards of the neighbors where the people that own the track live close by. So we had cars parked in their yard. We broke the all-time record at that fan attendance record at that track, and that track's been there, I want to say, since 1950 something. It was actually raced. They raced there when it was dirt in the 50s. So the track's been there since the 50s, and we broke the record, all-time fan attendance record. We've done that at several tracks. We got real close to it at Killcare, Ohio, which is a huge place. People say we only do this at small tracks. Well, I beg to differ. We've been to some pretty big places and filled the place up. As you've seen at Shadyside, that's not a gigantic place, but it's not a small place either. It has small bleachers, but they had tons and tons of parking, and we ran out.
Yeah, it was a great show, man. Stellar show.
It's incredible, believe me. I keep up with it. It's incredible. I'm proud of what he's done.
Well, Larry, you've helped a lot because you encouraged me early on. Remember me and you talked, and you gave me a lot of encouragement. When everybody else was bashing me, you was encouraging me.
I was, and I remember that day behind my shop, we talked for an hour, and I said, Don't give up on your dream, man. I thought it was great. And you and I both come from the same background, and I was really behind what you were doing, still am. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, a lot of good people's helped me, and like I said, I look back at people like you that was encouraging me to keep going, and other people was telling me how stupid I was, and I didn't know which ones to listen to, but I'm glad I listened to you guys.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, he's a smart man because he likes his Ford Pro Stocks. That's why I can attest to that one. But hey,
that's a good line.
But question for you, so now seeing your Southeast Gassers and everything take off, how does it feel to see kind of that younger generation kind of get behind you and support what you're doing, guys in my age, going out and saying, hey, this is what the tail end of growing up, what we were seeing, and now, it's bringing a full circle for us.
It's amazing because not just the racers. We expected to get a few young racers because their dads maybe pushed them into it. But we're getting young fans, and that's what is blowing my mind. Next year we'll be celebrating our 10th year anniversary. And we had figured this thing would be short-lived, maybe 5 years, because let's face it, our older guys are dying off and we're losing them. And we figured, but it's not like that. We're getting a lot of young fans. Colby Welch, our newest B-gas driver, he's been with us now for 2 years. He's 17 years old. He just won his first race at our Florida event at Holt, Florida this year. And so We got Josh Pruitt. Josh Pruitt, I think, is 20 or 21. He's been with us since he was 17. Josh has won several races. Colby finished fourth in the points this year. That's fourth out of 41 B-gas cars. That's just one class. 41 cars raced in B-gas this year. And Colby's fourth, 17 years old. So I think we're doing more to preserve drag racing than we really realized we was. At first, we was just trying to preserve the history. I'm not so sure that we're not working on the future just a little bit.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah. And I had a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people, Larry, has been telling me, Larry, they've been saying, you need to get involved with NHRA. I don't want to involve with NHRA. They'd destroy it. The first thing it would, and I love NHRA, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I do. I love NHRA. NHRA's got to be here. But they don't need to get involved in the gasser world. They need to stick with the modern day racing. Let us take care of this, because the first thing it would happen is it would be out of hand, and they'd let the rules go. That's what's made this work, is I've been ruling it with an iron fist.
Well, you've done the right thing, and I've followed it for a long time, and I think you're going to have a lot more support than what NHRA does at this point because of the cost of doing it. The cost is why you and I don't do it.
Yep. Hey, Larry, I got a neat story right quick. When I was in 1975, when I was 15 years old, I wanted to go racing. I wanted to go heads up first to finish line racing. Well, think back to 1975, the only class I could get into was Pro Stock. That was only, in 1975, that was the only class left that was heads up first to finish line on it. So I had to turn to bracket racing. And I bracket raced for 7 or 8 years. Now, fast forward to today, it's still the same problem for a 15 to 16-year-old kid to get involved into first to finish line wins racing. You got to build a $100,000 10.5 car. You got to spend another $100,000 to be competitive to race it for a year, but except for one deal, the Southeast Gassers. Colby Welch. Colby Welch would not be in drag racing right now, not heads up drag racing, if it wasn't for Southeast Gassers.
No, I agree 100%.
They couldn't afford to get into anything else. Well, we've made it affordable, and the stands are full, so they're proud to be there.
Sure.
Who wants to race in front of empty bleachers? I wouldn't.
Sure. No. Sure. Yeah. I mean, that has been a comment throughout the year with even the NHRA drivers. Like, it's just not the same without the fans. So you got to have the fans. No. And Quain, look, speaking of fans, that Shady Side race, the individual that won your award for the farthest drive, they were like a brother and sister, like 20-somethings from California. Yeah, Brock come for he wanted, that was his birthday present. He wanted to come see a Southeast Gasser race. They drove, not flew. They drove from California. I had somebody from Florida. Where was it? Anyway, hey, bring up another point. I won't shut up. You got to make me shut up. We got a guy from Sweden building a car. He's shipping it over here next year. He was going to do it this year, but the COVID messed everything up. He's shipping it over here next year, and he's flying back and forth to race with us. He's not going to do all the races. He's going to do 5. And he said it was his dream. He wants to race with Southeast Gassers. As a matter of fact, he painted the car patina, and I turned it down. I said, we don't have patina paint. They didn't have patina in the 60s. That's something people get confused about. We're not trying to look back to 1960. We're trying to take the fans to 1960. So a 1960 or a 1955 Chevrolet would only been 12 years old in our world. So that's what we try to do, is protect that. That's why we have nice paint jobs on car. We're not trying to do a rat rod show here. The other guys can do that. Yep. We're trying to truly take the fans back to 1967. So this guy, when I called him and told him, I said, I'm sorry, Mangus, but I can't let that paint job fly. You know what he's doing? He's repainting it. He said, well, I'm not going to let that paint job destroy my dreams of coming to American racing and Southeast Gassers. So that's what he's doing.
That's cool.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, Quain, as I like to say, what you're doing is drag racing reenactment, just in the modern day. It's really what's happening. Yeah, it's really what's happening. Hey, Bobby from Competition Plus TV asks this. We are going to sponsor Larry Morgan to race an Edsel Gasser. Is that legal for Quain Series? Bobby Bennett.
Oh, yeah, it's legal, especially if Larry's going to drive it.
All right, there we go. Next year, 2021, breaking news. Larry Morgan's in a Gasser.
There we go.
Hey, listen to this, guys. Pro Mod. We've been calling it the Pro Mod Retirement Camp. Terry Housley's built a gasser. He's coming racing with us. Rick Jones, the chassis builder, he's been calling me. He's hunting a car. Ted Smith used to run Pro Mod. Ken Rainwater, first man to ever go into fours in a 10.5 car. He's been racing with us two races now. Alan Golden, Pro Mod driver. Tommy Mooney's building a super stock car.
You know why? They want to have fun.
That's right. That's what they all telling me. Ken has been, I don't know how fast Ken's been. He's been probably 390s or something. And he's just ecstatic with this B-gas car. He said, man, this is the hardest thing to drive. He says, twice as hard to drive. And everybody admits, when you got to use a 4-speed with a clutch now, keep in mind, we do not allow clutchless shifting. And it brings up a whole new world.
Sure. Well, I agree with that part 100%. And you've made these young kids coming in, they're doing a fabulous job over there for you. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool.
Yes, it is. Our world champion in C-Gas was George Miller from Indiana. And I think George is only in his early 20s, like 21 or so. And he's our world champion this year in the C-Gas class, 21 years old. Then we got Danny Bird that's got the record in B-Gas. He's 80. Y'all may remember Danny. Danny raced in NHRA. He drove for Herb McCandless in the 60s. Danny's been in NHRA. Somebody asked Danny the other day if he enjoys racing the Southeast Gassers more than NHRA. And he said, well, I got 2 stock eliminator cars sitting at home. It's been parked for 3 years or 4 years ever since my first Southeast Gasser race. I haven't even started them up since. So that answers that question.
Yes, that does. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You got to like those stories.
Yeah, I love it, especially in him that old. And he's been in every kind of drag racing there was. He started out, like I said, driving for McCandless and some of them back in the day, and he's moved up. He was in Pro Stock in 1970. He had a 70 Camaro. He raced Pro Stock. He's been around. Mm-hmm.
That means we have hope.
Have what?
We have hope. We can get there.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Got a question in for you, Larry. Question is, what was your favorite race car you ever drove?
I've driven so many and I've had a lot of favorites, but I would have to say the 1989 Cutlass that Don Ness built. We had a fabulous time with that car. I would have to say that was the best one.
Don Ness is still my hero. I hate it when he passed away. He was bar none the best chassis builder that ever was. He was the greatest.
He was the greatest, and what a guy he was.
Yep, I've got a '78 Camaro now that's his. It's the old Waco Kid car, Rich DeLisi's car. I've got it in the back building. I bought it. Oh Lord, I've had it 10 years, I guess, but I want to restore it one of these days. But obviously, it don't look like it's ever going to happen.
You're not going to have time to do that, boy.
No, don't look like it.
It's better to have projects.
I've had a lot.
It's better to have projects.
Oh, I got too many of them. Way too many. I want to take a minute, and then I'll quit taking the floor. Our world champions this year, they just texted me or sent a message a while ago. George Miller was 23 in B-Gas, C-Gas, but Steve Davis from Monroe, North Carolina, won A-Gas world champion this year in one of the most dramatic championship battles I ever seen. Steve came into the last race in 3rd place, and he left in 1st, and it went down to the final round, and so that's pretty cool in the last race. TJ York from Ohio won B-Gas.
Yep.
TJ had his championship wasn't decided till this race. I think he had to win 1st round. George Miller, who I just spoke of, won C-Gas, 23 years old. Mark Hackett won Super Stock. So in every single one of those races was not decided until the last race. So that kind of shows the competition and that we're so proud of. And there again, just like y'all was talking earlier, we're promoting the competition, not the numbers they run.
Yeah, you're right there. That's the right way to do it.
Well, Larry, talking about the right way of doing it, a lot of folks, I don't think they realize, but you're still out there in the NHRA Pro Stock pits. I mean, I was able to talk with you a little bit at the Gator Nationals, and I know you've helped Beaver Motorsports, and
Sure.
there was even some talk about you getting in a car and driving this year. So what actually are you doing at the track even these days, man?
Well, my full-time job at the track is helping Frank Manzo and Mike Castellano on the Pro Mod car. I work on that car with them. But I was down in Florida with Beaver and Mark Beaver, and he's a wonderful guy, man. I want to see him do good. He's offered me the job of driving that car if I want, and I would like to do it if we can make some kind of a deal, because you know what I do is still enjoy racing and driving, and I drove a Outlaw Pro Mod car a couple of years ago and ran 367 in it in the 8th mile. And I will tell you this much: going from 420s to 360s, that's interesting, believe me. But I've got a good friend, one of my best friends I race a comp car with, Eugene Kelly from here in Ohio. I enjoy doing that with him. I just love to race. I'm like, what else are we going to do with our life?
Yeah, and I mean, you're involved in that. Are you still doing anything with the Pro Stock cylinder head development? Are you still working with that also?
Nah, that whole deal just got out of hand. The cost of doing Pro Stock stuff was just ridiculous. When they put the fuel in, when the fuel injection come along, it kind of took it away from me doing development work, because I knew that it was just a matter of time till that class was totally ruined. When NHRA done that, and I'm not picking on them, they made some knee-jerk decisions to do things that really set that class back 5 or 6 years. I think when they done that, it just hadn't been the same. And I have a lot of friends that still run the class, so I support it. But as far as doing any of that stuff, I don't do any of it.
So speaking of all that, how do you feel with, the recent, we've talked about it here on the show, with the recent sponsor pulling out with not having Harley there anymore? What do you think about that, dynamic?
Well, I think that we all, and I mean, everybody on this show right now will agree, when we have sponsors, we should take care of them. Like NHRA's got the new sponsor in there with the Camping World, and we need to all work together and help them. We need to all unite and support it. There's quite a few guys out there like Chip from Strut Masters. I mean, that guy's out there helping a lot of people, and we all ought to try and support the guy. I mean, I think what's happened to our sport is that people got away from supporting the sponsors, and I think we need to do that to get the sponsorships of these cars back in shape again. The whole deal is the cost of doing what we do got out of line, and you can't afford to race anymore. And I think what happened was, it happened to the racers before it happened to NHRA. Now, just this last season, because of the COVID, NHRA got caught up in that trap. Used to cost $1 million to run a Pro Stock car. Then it got real expensive. Now it's coming back. But NHRA, they never saw that until this last season, when they didn't have the money to put on a show like they needed to. And I think it's went full circle. Now they're understanding what we went through as racers to be in a position we were in. And I think it just needs restructured. And I think you're going to get that. It's just going to take a while for it to happen.
So, Quain, as Larry has mentioned about a sanctioning body taking care of sponsors, there's many sponsors involved with Sega. What are some ways that even a nostalgia group, drag racing reenactors, are taking care of sponsors and saying, hey, thanks for supporting us?
It's unbelievable, because we didn't think we'd ever get any sponsors, because I have a very strict rule that their sticker has to be a nostalgia font. In other words, Summit came on board 2 years ago in a very, very small way. And they came to one race. And that winter, they went big time. This would have been for 2020. And one of the reasons they didn't want to come in a big way to start with is because I wouldn't let them use their modern sticker. So they went and approved their 1970 decal, and that's what we use now on our racetrack. Now, we can hang up their banners and stuff, modern banners, but I'm not going to tell a guy he's got to build this old school suspension. He's got to use, even got to down to the gauges, and then put a modern sticker on the outside the car like the other nostalgia events do. Our cars have to be hand lettered. Now, the decal can be a decal like it would have been in the 60s, but any lettering has to be hand lettered. So Summit stepped up and brought out their old decal from 1970. Now we're expecting real big things from Summit again this year. We haven't negotiated yet, but I don't know what they liked about us, but they loved something because, like I say, they came in and did a small deal in 2008 and 2019, and then in 2020, I didn't ask for another penny, but I got it. Hoosier Tire. Hoosier, believe it or not, they proved to me that their decal is the one they've been using since the early 70s. NGK, believe it or not, which they don't sponsor us anymore, but they did for a while. That was left over from my Pro Mod stuff. NGK's got the same decal since 1939. So when you see the NGK decal on our cars, it's not modern. But Molly, the piston ring company, they sponsored our B and C gas class this year. They brought out a decal that we had to approve a decal. Scott Wires come on again, and we had to approve their decal. So it's really tough to be a sponsor, and it's kind of weird. People can't believe it. Said, you're turning away sponsors because they're decal? I said, I sure do. I treat the sponsors, I treat the racetracks, and I treat the racers all the same. We have rules for everything because the show's got to stay pure or it'll lose, or then the sponsors won't want to be here anyway. But we've got a lot of new stuff coming out this year that we're not ready to announce yet, but we've got lots of new stuff. If the COVID and all that don't kill us, and I won't get into the political end of it, but I'm worried about that too. But if everything goes good, I think we're going to have a really big year. And Lee, I don't know how to answer your question. I really don't know what we do for them, but they sure do. They sure are starting to love us, and we're appreciating that. And I tell every sponsor, I'll say this to every single one of them. If they're out there listening, they'll contest this. If I can't help you, I don't want you here. I'm not here just for their money.
That's
I
a good motto.
I want to be able to show them what we can do. And because why would we want? I don't want anybody here that we can't help, and I think they're seeing that, and we're proving to them we can help them.
I think you're doing a wonderful job. I will say that.
Well, I appreciate it, Larry, because coming from you, it means a lot. Especially somebody like you's been there. You know, you could critique it from now on, and we got a lot of things. You know, I tell everybody says we're 100% period correct. No, we're not. We're not even close to 100% period correct. And I have people tell me all the time, they say, why don't you just use the 1967 rule book instead of having all these rules that we have? Well, the 1967 rule book, before fuel injection was put on Pro Stock, you could take a 1967 NHRA rule book and build a gas rule book and build a Pro Stocker. Because nowhere in there did it say you couldn't run a 16 wide tire. Nowhere in there did it say you couldn't run a strut front end. Nowhere in there did it say you couldn't run a Lenco transmission. We had to go in there and make the rules for stuff that's come along since 1967. But you can truly do that if you go take the NHRA gas rule book from 1967. Your Pro Stock car from 7 or 8 years ago would fit it. It'd fit right in. Gasoline, you had to run gasoline, and that was the only requirement was gasoline. So we had to redo all of that, and that's why we don't use. Because I get asked that question a lot. They say, "Why did you make the rules so complicated? Why didn't you just use the 1967 rule book?" Well, you can't do that. Maybe that's what the others are doing. The reason they're so screwed up.
That's funny.
As Larry would once say, you just can't fix stupid, right?
You can't fix. Listen, you can't.
No way.
You can't fix stupid. And I'm gonna tell you, if you have money, that can't fix stupid either.
So with all this talk of the rule book and everything like that, Larry, got to ask you, if you could change any couple of rules there in Pro Stock, make adjustments, change things just a little bit, which ones would you attack right away and say, hey, we need to change these?
Well, I just don't care for the fuel injection. One of the reasons, because I'm an old time racer, and I was a carburetor guy. But the thing is, you have to have someone that knows how to operate that. I mean, I'm getting okay with it, but still, I mean, you have to hire a tuner to tune these things. And getting back to the way that it used to be, you didn't ever needed a tuner. The guy that could go out and beat the crap out of it and make it run good was a guy. Now you got to have a full-time tuner. And I think that puts extra cost into it. And I think the other thing, the RPM, when they back the RPM down, that cut the cost probably in half of what it costs to run a Pro Stock car. And let's say mid 15, because we return those things like 11.8, and the valve train, you had to destroy it after probably 30 runs because it was no good anymore. The next thing that went was the engine, and the cost of building those engines and throwing them away, it didn't make any sense. And I think that those two things, the RPM is what really helped the class. Shortening the wheelie bars, the fuel injection, the hood scoop, that was a bunch of crap. That was a waste. If they were going to put fuel injection, they should have added 2 injectors per cylinder, and they just put 1. So now they have a tuning issue. But I mean, there's a lot of good things about fuel injection, but the way they approached it was dead wrong.
So, Larry, straight from the Competition Plus desk, look, talk to me about that Fiero in the mid-'80s that you raced. Am I even saying it right? I mean, that's way before my time. I'm not sure, man.
Listen, that was something now. I had a Pontiac Fiero in the 80s, and I'm going to tell you what now. That's what brought me to real life of drag racing, learning how to do that 4-cylinder. But I have to say that thing was ahead of its time, probably 15 years. And that car probably made me what I am today. I learned an awful lot at that time. In the 2 years I run that thing.
Going back to 1984 for you there, Larry, how was it not missing an event? I think you once said it, that you probably missed 1 or 2 events in that time period. What was it like for you to know and go to every race?
You know what? I went to every race but one from 1984 to 2016. Every race but one. And the one I missed was because the NHRA didn't like the block we were using, and we couldn't get blocks in time. So that was why I missed that race. But I never missed a race. And to be honest with you, I missed a whole lot of things around here. I missed my niece's weddings and things like that, but I never missed a race. That's how dedicated to the sport I was. And to be honest with you, I didn't know any better.
That's pretty impressive, Larry, to have a record like that. I didn't realize you'd went that long and not missed a race, but that's very impressive.
Well, I know this much. It was a long time.
Yeah.
And
well,
I remember the first race that I didn't go. I thought I was going to go crazy, my wife and I.
That's same.
We thought, what in the hell's going on here?
Yeah, I did the same thing. I didn't miss an IHRA Pro Mod race for 9 years, but you got to remember, IHRA only had 10 or 11 races a year, so it wasn't that. And then, of course, we did a lot of match races. In 2013, when we decided to park the Pro Stocker that winter, the first race of 2014, Cynthia and I was sitting at home that Sunday morning, and I turned the internet on, and I said, you know what? They did race without me.
Yeah.
And because I didn't think they could. For 19 years, I did not think that race could happen without me being there. So I never missed an IHRA national event. Well, I didn't miss an IHRA national event for 14 years. Then I didn't miss an ADRL national event for the other 5 because I raced the 2, but whatever sanctioned body I raced with. But I realized that morning, just like you said, you know what? They can race without me, but
Yes,
I
they
didn't
can.
think they could. But
Yes, they can.
Yeah, they can. They can race without us.
We didn't think so, but they can.
Somebody will take our place. They always have, haven't they?
That's right.
They have. Well, guys, look, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Pro Mod with both of you guys, because y'all have got, obviously some time spent in Pro Mod, and then we're going to close the show down. So quick break, Pro Mod, and then the Power Hour is wrapped up.
Okay,
in the race for quality, there is no finish line. Jerry Bickle Race Cars is a one-stop chassis shop for drag racing performance parts and race components. For over 50 years, Jerry Bickle Race Cars has been an essential part of racers' plans for building world champion race cars. Our parts department is stocked with every part a racer might need. Log on to jerrybickle.com for more information. We build anything with doors. jerrybickle.com.
All right, Larry, you're out there tuning and doing the Pro Mod thing. And I was down there at the World Door Slammer Nationals, and I'm looking, I'm like, is that who I think it is? Is that like, what is that? And yeah, I mean, so man, look, what did you think about the World Door Slammer Nationals that Drag Illustrated put on?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm a race fan of almost every class, and I raced a little bit and helped tune some cars with Patrick Barnhill and Jason Lee. To be honest with you, that's how that deal started. They asked me if I would break some tires in for Eric Gustafson, and I said, why not? So I went up to Dragway 42 and run a car. That's when I realized that you have to have a tuner to operate one of those cars. And he told me within inches of where that thing was going to blow the tires off. And I thought, hell, I couldn't even dream of racing one of these cars without them two knuckleheads. And I got into that. And I'm just a big fan of racing, period. I like every class. I mean, you'll see me at those races. I'm up there watching every car.
And seeing that,
I do enjoy it.
Seeing that, I got to ask you here, Larry, with the talk of, there's always this talk of the radio racers versus the Pro Mod racers. And should we have this big clash race where, outlaw versus Pro Mod and all this? What do you think? What's your opinions on both of those classes?
You know what? I'm telling you, it's just a show. It's really the show. And once we all really realize that, that's what it's all about. And you know what? The radio guy, I've got a lot of respect for all the guys that run different big tires, radials. There's a niche for every bit of it. I'm not sure how you can run them together, but there's a niche for all the classes. And I'm happy that there are places for everybody to race.
So, Quain, you haven't raced the Pro Mod for a while now. One, do you still have the cars, and do you have any plans whatsoever to bring it back out?
No, because Pro Mod got, like Larry was just talking about Pro Stock, it just got too expensive. I had great sponsors. Lee Boy was with me for 17 years, and I was still a very low buck racer. Even with Lee Boy's help, I didn't have everything we needed. My whole Pro Mod career, I had a volunteer crew. I did finally hire one guy, Brandon Howard, come on and helped us. When we put the second team on, when we had the Torco sponsor and when we had the Mohegan Sun sponsor, I hired a crew to work those cars. But my car was still volunteer. And in 2013, when the economy got bad and Lee Boy had to pull the plug, I searched a little bit for sponsor, but I could tell real quick I wasn't going anywhere. Yes, I do still have one of the cars. I sold the spare, the one that we used for the Mohegan car and the Torco deal. Tommy DeAples drove the Torco car and that we owned and tuned. But I drove Steve Vick's car at one race in 214, an outlaw race, back in a nitrous car for the first time in 13 years. And that was the last pace I made in a Pro Mod car, was in 214. Now, I went on and tuned a few. I kept tuning. I tuned Dina Parisi there for 1 year. And but there was one time that I was tuning 3 cars, mine, Terry Leggett's, and Tommy Yaples when Tommy was driving for Mel Bush. I was tuning 3 cars at one race. Terry Leggett bought me a mini bike because I was running from pit to pit, and Terry showed up at the next race with a mini bike. And he said, "Here, you're killing yourself." But I realized real quick that we all was suffering because I was trying to do too much. So none of us really prospered at that point. And we did okay, but we didn't do like we should. But no, Lee, unless a big sponsor comes along, I wouldn't turn it down. But right now I wouldn't do anything, and I mean anything, to jeopardize the Southeast Gassers, because I'm way more proud of this right now than I am anything, and I was Carcraft Driver of the Year. In 2001, I won championships, won a bunch of races, but none of it compares to what I feel like I'm doing for the racing world with the Southeast Gassers. I think I've accomplished more. I just wanted to do something. Racing was good to me, and I wanted to give something back, and I feel like that's what I'm doing now. So even if a big sponsor come along right now, I wouldn't do it if it jeopardized the Southeast Gassers. As much as I would love to. As much as I would love to get back. And I tell you, I miss the people more than I do the racing, I think. We had a lot of good friends.
Whoop, there it is. The he's plowing his craft there with the Southeast Gassers.
I will say this. I would like to try my hand at Stevie Fast. I've heard about it. I would love to have Stevie in my world back then, and I would love to be in Stevie's world. Because I think I would wear him out in my world and he would wear me out in his world. But I would love to be able to try Stevie back then, whenever I was at my prime, and then now he can try me at his prime. And I'm sure the tables would turn for sure. But I would just love to do it because he's the big man now. And or seems to be from what I'm following, and he's a great racer. There's no doubt about it. And of course, the first thing you want to do is you might as well anytime you're in a fight, you always get the big guy first, get him out of the way.
That's right.
Right. Well, look, we already put Larry in a gasser in 2021. Apparently, we need to have a match race between you and Stevie. Then, I mean.
Yeah. Well, I would have to hire a tuner now because that stuff's got so far advanced for me. That's why I said I'd like to have Stevie in my world before we had race pack computers and all that stuff. Because when I first started running Pro Mod, I didn't even have a race pack. I remember, and Larry remember this, when that first one come out with a little piece of paper. It put like an adding machine. It come off, and we thought we really had something then. But I remember somebody asked me what picked the Pro Mods up so much, and I said there wasn't no special parts. We just learned what we was doing because we didn't have a clue back then. We was taking pro stock cars that were designed for 1,500 horsepower and putting 2,500 in them.
Yep.
It wasn't going to go down a racetrack.
No.
It was not going to go. And there again, look back, look how good the show was.
Sure.
They was great, and that's exactly what's going on with our gasser deal. My gasser deal now reminds me of Pro Mod in the early 90s. We're running about the same speed our A-gas cars are.
Look here, Lee, I think at this point we've got it all, right? We've got you and I racing on tricycles or three-wheelers or whatever that is earlier this year. And now we've got you on a motorcycle too, Lee. I forgot about that one.
Someone needs to work that out. I'm on a motorcycle next year sometime.
And now we've got Quain saying he wants to race Stevie. We had Stevie on last week. So I think we just all go down to Florida here in March and we just kind of make all this happen. And with that, I kind of want to lead with this final question for you guys. What have you seen over the years that has drag racing for you guys changed? The history of it, the love of it, the passion, even though you guys are stepping away, you're in a different limelight. Has the love for drag racing changed for you guys at all?
Not for me. I still love it as much as I ever did. And I've been blessed to do it my whole life. So I think I'm like Quain. I agree that I got a little to give back, and I'm going to do that as much as I can.
Well, look, we already put Larry in a gasser in 2021. Apparently, we need to work that out. I'm on a motorcycle next year sometime. And now we've got Quain saying he wants to race Stevie. We had Stevie on last week. So I think I'm like Quain. I agree that I got a little to give back, and I'm going to do that as much as I can.
Yeah, I mirror Larry's comment because I still love the sport, and you know, I want to see it live. And the small ma and pa tracks are the ones that's suffering now. They're having to rely on test and tune to survive because there's no match races anymore. There's nothing that, in bracket racing don't draw spectators. I have some of my best friends bracket race, but they'll tell you they race in front of empty bleachers.
Yeah.
So there's nothing left to keep the ma and pa tracks open, and that's what's so sad to me is our local tracks are closing down because there's no way for them to make a living. Now, of course, obviously our deal does good for them, but we only do 11 races a year. We can't help them all. And Larry, like you said, I don't know. I love it. I still love it. I love it more than ever, I guess. But I just wish we could save it. And it's really starting to look scary. But something will come along.
It'll come back. I think what you do is really a wonderful thing. Like I said, I'm very proud of what you've done, and you stuck with it. And I knew you would, because when we talked that day, like I said, I'll never forget that day. We talked for an hour and a half.
Yep.
I knew at that point that you weren't giving up, and I was awful proud of you for that. And I watch what you do to this day, and I think it's awful cool because you can afford to do that. These kids can't afford to do what we done.
No, no way.
What you and I done.
No young kid could come along and run pro mod even the way I did it. They couldn't. And like pro stock, like you pointed out earlier, there's no ways. And we've got to keep first to finish line racing alive.
Sure.
We've got to do it some way, in the way we do it. But I don't know. It's a tough question to answer, Lee. But the bottom line is I do still love drag racing probably more than I ever did now, because it's really been good to me the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, if you ever want to bring the Southeast Gassers out of the Southeast and bring them up here to the frozen tundra here in North Dakota, we'll take them anytime you want to bring them up here.
We got one in Ohio and one in Indiana, and we keep easing our way up because of the spectators. I got 24 racetracks on a waiting list right now. 24 tracks begging for our show.
That's cool.
It is, and that's not counting the 11 we're doing. That's 24 on a list, and some of them are up that way. We're spreading out, but just can't do it. I can't get to it.
Don't change anything.
I'm not. Nothing's going to change. If anything, it's getting stricter. Hey, you'll love this, Larry, and I'll make this announcement tonight. I'll do this. A lot of the racers are maybe watching, and I like to stir up trouble. But everybody complains that we're not perfectly period correct, and I make the brag that we have no driver aids. And but we do have one driver aid, and that's a shift light. Well, in 2021, that driver aid will not be there. The shift light's coming out in 2021. Cool. So they won't even be a shift light in 2021. So we're fixing to put the new rules out here in a few weeks, or at least some revisions, and that's one of them. So I will tell you this, the only change will be made, the rules will get stricter, not slacker. And we're adding 50 pounds to every car. Every car out there's got 50 pounds put on it because we're trying to slow them back down to more reality. We don't want them. Instead of shortening a racetrack, we're going to slow the cars down.
Yeah.
NHRA shortened the racetrack. We're going to slow the cars down.
That's very smart.
Yep.
There you go, Lee. I after that mic drop right there, no more shift light. We're putting weight in it. I think that just wraps up the show right there for us. I mean, what more to say?
Well, look, before we do go, it's interesting that Quain mentions what he does about the shift light adding weight. You can still drive cars without a shift light. Look, Richie Stevens Jr. had to do it at the Gators.
Every run.
Come on, he had to do it.
Every run. He did a hell of a job.
It's a driver aid, and we don't want driver aids, and that's another reason money can dominate. See, I'll try to be quick. The high dollar engines that some of these guys are running now, they're short stroke, big bore engines, so they don't have a lot of torque, so they have to be shifted perfect. Well, your low buck guys are still running a stroker engines. It's got plenty of torque and be shifted about wherever they want to be shifted, and they'll still run about the same ET. Some of these little engines, they don't fall off a tenth if you miss a shift. They fall off 2 tenths.
Yeah.
Well, this taking that shift light away, they're going to have to be better drivers than they were this year to make those little engines, those high dollar engines run. So, we sit down and we take away the shift light, and the ones that complain are the ones that can't drive.
Right. That's exactly right.
I can't wait to hear the complaints, because that's going to be the ones that, I got to have my shift light. Well, the guy that don't need a shift light's going to outrun you. I remember when Ronnie Socks, when the Lenco come into play, Ronnie was known as the best 4-speed driver ever was, and whenever the Lenco come into play, it made it even. I fought to our shifters in Pro Mod, because I said, don't make it easy. The ones that can't pull levers shouldn't be winning.
That's right.
Well, if you got to have a shift light, you ain't gonna win in Southeast Gassers, so they better learn to drive. Is all I can tell them.
Woo!
Yeah, you got some comments coming in about that one.
I figured I'd get them going. But I said that to make a point. We're every year our rules get stricter. And the other groups slack them up every year, because you know what? They're wanting more cars. I don't want no more cars. We got plenty. We don't charge an entry fee for the driver or the crew, so it don't make me no more money to have 300 cars.
So
I want spectators. I want spectators. Yeah, that's right. Your Edsel, it's legal, as long as it's 67 or older. But really and truly, we want spectators. We want spectators, and we want racers. Don't get me wrong, but we want quality. We want the cream of the crop, and that's what we're getting. The strict rules has ruled out the ones that don't need to be here. There's other places they can go race.
Yeah,
we're getting the cream of the crop. Make it hard to do, and you will weed out the ones that don't need to be.
Right.
Here.
That's right.
And that's what we've done. We've made it difficult to do.
And make the fans happy.
Make the fans happy. Making it difficult to do makes it a better show.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, what's the old saying? Quality, not quantity.
There you go.
That some other sanctioning bodies take just a little bit of the formula that the Southeast Gassers has figured out. Well, guys, look, thank you for being on Power Hour tonight. You, Quain, you, Larry. We're going to let you go. We have already been through the lights. The chute's been pulled, and we're in the shutdown area, and we need to get out.
Thank you.
I think after that, I think we're already in the sand trap. I'm just saying that was a Granada drop on everybody.
Well, thank
you heard it here first. You heard it here first. You heard it on the Power Hour first. Yep.
We appreciate that.
And Larry, it's so good to talk to you, Larry. Yep. I hope let's try it. Maybe one day we'll meet up for lunch somewhere.
I'd love that.
Be wonderful.
Okay. Well, it's good. Thank you guys for having us.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, Sam, look, on my show Thursday night, I'm going to have the A-Gas champion. He will be on. I'm going to be chatting with him from Southeast Gassers Association, along with Mark Caruso. That's 8 p.m. on Between the Slicks on the Monday Morning Racer channel. Look, who you got coming on your podcast?
Next, I got a local guy here, a sport mod driver here on In the Groove podcast. You can check that out on Outlaw Performance ENT or every podcast forum that you listen to. As soon as you get done listening to us over here at the Competition Plus Power Hour on your Google Podcast, Anchor, or Podbean, or whoever you listen to, you can switch over and listen to me over at In the Groove podcast. But man, I gotta say that was some big news drop tonight. Great, interaction with all our fans that we have here, the people listening, chiming in with your comments and concerns. We really appreciate that. If you guys have any questions for us for this mind-blowing week next week that we have scheduled for you guys, please put those in the comments. Yeah, we're going to tell you about that. But email us over at powerhourcp@gmail.com. You can email us all your questions. Lee, I need your attention. Who do we have for next week? Just break it to me.
So it's such a big lineup. I don't even remember them all. I don't.
Oh,
let me drop number one. Ricky Smith.
Man, that's an hour 30 within itself. It's got to be.
It is.
Who's number two, Lee?
Who is number two? Look, dude, it's such a stellar show. I've already forgot. Man.
Come on. It's just huge.
I stand in awe of the star power that is up for the next show. It is mind-boggling.
Ricky Smith. Sorry, we got Roy Hill and the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Pat Musey. Oh man, like we're gonna break their internet with that show.
Yeah, the internet's breaking. Yeah, the internet's breaking.
So if you guys have any questions for those three people, please powerhourcp@gmail.com. Also, we will have all of these guests hopefully back on with their own show so we can break down and ask them a little bit more questions. And if you haven't done already, please go over to Competition Plus, give them a like, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And Power Hour is on the podcast form. I am one half of this great show. I think I'm the better looking half because you guys can see my face. Shots fired, Lee. But I am Slammin' Sam from Outlaw Performance ENT, and tonight was epic. But if you are not here for next week, you're missing out. What about you, Lee?
Yes, epic tonight. We have continued to grow the list of what races will happen in 2021. It's spectacular to announce that, yeah, Larry's going to be back in a drag car, and it's a gasser at a Southeast Gasser Association race. It's got to happen. We've got to make that happen somehow. And also the tricycle race. Don't know how. That's got to happen too. Because I don't know. I want to line up and beat some people in the media world in the tricycle race. But wow, no shift lights. Like, look, it can be done. Like I mentioned, Stevie did it. I mean, he at the Gators. You can look at my interview with him on Between the Slicks. He got it done. It can be done.
That's just a lot of valve float, is what you're telling me. Listen to him float, baby, and shift that gear. But hey, that tricycle race, you need a win there because right now the Slammy Award, that is our award here. We don't give out Wallies on the Power Hour. We give out Slammies. And I'm up 2-0 right now, Lee. So I'm gonna need you to step it up.
All I've got to say on the Slammies thing is, first of all, I came up with it, so I should have at least one, okay?
Give you a half. I'll give you a half there.
Secondly, who's the panel deciding this? How does it go in your favor 2 weeks in a row? No, man. It's rigged. It's rigged.
Every question that we've asked, they've all, decided they're the cereal. No one agreed with you on the cereal. So actually, I should be 3. The cereal, the electric car, and now mile per hour. Man.
Just because the masses agree don't mean they right.
All right, everybody.
Close us out.
It's been a great episode.
Close us out.
Well, he doesn't want to agree that I'm up, but that's all right. Thank you, everybody, for coming on, leaving all your comments. Please get a hold of us. But this has been another episode of the Competition Plus Power Hour.